conversation is really going to be centered around mentorship. And so as you're coming in, you see at the bottom how to go to our mailing list to join the mailing list, but we will also have more information about the organization that we'll be talking about today. So I want to give you all about a couple of minutes to come in, pose any questions that you may have in advance, and it will come up on the screen and we'll address those as that interview goes on. So come on in. Thank you for all for coming today. Conversation is really going to be centered around mentorship. And so as you're again, happy Wednesday. Hopefully you all are going to join your day. And again, we'll get started exactly at about the organization that we'll be talking about today. So I want to give you all about a couple of minutes to come in, pose any questions that you may have in advance, and it will come up on the screen and we'll address those as that interview goes on. So come on in. Come on in. Come on in. Today. Is really going to be centered around mentorship. And so again, as you come in, let us know you're here. Let us know who you are. We are excited about tonight's conversation. And again, we will get started exactly at the organization that we'll be talking about today. So I'm going to give you all about a couple of minutes to come in, pose any questions that you may have in advance, and it will come up on the screen and we'll address those as that interview goes on. So come on in. Come on in. Come on in. Again, as you come in, let us know who you are. Again, every Wednesday we will do a remix and narrative talk. Today's focus is on young men. Our guest for today is Vondale Singleton, which we will bring in less than 2 minutes. So as you're coming in, share this live, share this live. It's going to be a dope conversation just about the power of mentorship and just what should we be doing during this time. So again, as you are coming into our conversation, share, share, share. It's going to be an amazing conversation within the next 2 minutes. We are excited about tonight's conversation. Come on in. Hello, hello. Come on in. Our conversation will be starting very soon. Yes, I see more people coming in. Hello, hello. Awesome. So we're going to go ahead and bring Mr. Singleton in. So as you all are coming in, you will see that our conversation is all geared around mentorship. And so I thank you all for coming. How are you, Neil? How are you, sir? All right, let's go ahead and get started.
What's
Vondale, how
happening?
are you?
I'm good. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I can. How have you been today?
You know what? It's been a busy day, but got a lot
I know you
done.
said you had all these meetings. I'm like, okay, okay.
Yep, meeting after meeting. I had about 4 meetings today. So,
Oh, wow.
but this is the passion part right here. This is
Awesome,
the passion
awesome. Well,
part. So
thank you
I'm
so
really
much.
excited. Thanks for
Yes,
having me
thank
on.
you. Yeah, we're gonna have a great conversation. So as people are coming in, just as I'm sharing right before you came in, this whole conversation is about the power of mentorship. And so every Wednesday, I'll be hosting what's called Remix and Narrative Talks. Our boys conference was scheduled for May 2nd, but due to everything, we're gonna have to postpone it. But I still want us to have opportunities for families and people to share and see just some of the wonderful speakers we had lined up, and also for them just to learn about resources that are available for them right now. And so, as people are coming in the comments, the way this works is that if you have a question or if you have a comment, put it in the comments. It will come up on the screen. Also, if you would like for us to like go back to something we said, put it in the comments, and I'll be having those come up momentarily as we're talking. But we're going to get started because this is exactly 6:01. And so as people come in, we'll just keep the conversation rolling. And I'm excited. This is a new platform, Vondale, so I'm trying to figure it out as we go. So this
Yeah,
should be
you and I
cool.
both. You and I both. So we'll figure it out together. We'll figure it out together.
Yeah. So first question that I have up is the beginning. And so I always love asking individuals, especially just the wonderful impact that your organization is doing, not only just in Chicago, but just across the nation. The beginning, though, because we have individuals I know that are on here who, one, may have sons who they really want to, they're on here because they want to learn more about your organization. Or secondly, they may be individuals who are looking for, man, how can I be that change? Like, how can I create something as well? So can you share a little bit about the beginning? Like, how did this even come to become what it is today?
Yeah, the short story is I met a mentor. That mentor, he saw something in me that I didn't see in myself, and he extended the opportunity for me to have some exposure. And so in '97, I had never flown a plane. I was 17 years old, and my first trip was to San Francisco through the Upward Bound program at Marquette University, and it was my first flight. And seeing the palm trees in person, not in the encyclopedia, but in person,
Yeah.
it actually accelerated something in my brain where I actually realized that I can actually be on a college campus. And so within a year, I enrolled at Oral Roberts University in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And within 4 years, I graduated from college and wanted to do what my mentor did. So I called him up and said, "Sir, what do I need to do to pay you back?" And he said, "The same thing that I did for you, do for somebody else." And that's where the DNA of mentorship happened for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I said I had to pay him back. And so in order to pay him back, I needed to mentor. And so that's kind of the short story.
So even thinking about the short story, let's now go to the mission and impact of now Champs, right? So now we have to pay it back. We're now going into a Champs male mentoring program. So paying it forward. When did you see, okay, this is that opportunity for me to truly execute and then now pay it forward? So talking about the mission and impact of your organization.
Yeah, looking around, daily we talk about the pandemic that we're in, but
Yep.
I also want to say we're in an epidemic. So we're in a pandemic and an epidemic. The epidemic is gun violence, high rates in Chicago, still happening, and seeing constantly in the media our young men being gunned down in the street, killing one another. And part of that, the root problem is lack of resources, lack of opportunities, lack of jobs. And so I knew, because of what my mentor did for me, if I was going to do it for somebody else, I had to get down and say, okay, how do I impact young men that look like me, that are from similar situations from me? I can relate to them because I
Exactly.
started in the South Side Chicago projects and graduated from college. So I had a level of empathy to really get down and be patient with the process, knowing that the work of mentorship is not overnight work.
Yeah.
It's consistency over and over and over and over, and then it may look like you're losing, then you may get a small win, and you celebrate that small win. You don't get
Yeah.
discouraged when things don't happen fast. And so for me, it's just like looking at the dynamics, the narrative that are expressed in our medias, and just like, nah, this can't be, because if it happened for me, it can happen for somebody else.
And so what made you target in on the demographic that you focus on? So I know you said boys that, of course, I think when I looked at your mission, like culturally relevant, right? So being able to
Yep.
connect, to be able to have that empathy. But what made you pick the pocket of 12 years and up?
Yeah, so I got my formal education as an education major.
Mm-hmm.
Was a teacher, went into the classroom, and actually on a daily basis saw some of the high needs that our young men were facing. It was the highest suspension rates, highest dropout rates, the lowest GPA rates, and the list goes on and on. So in every measure across, we were bottomed out. And so I'm like, we have to do something to attack where it starts. And so when you say it starts at home, yes, I agree with that. However, when you're looking at broken homes, they're not getting fully the attention that they need at home. If the dad is not there, the mom working 2 or 3 jobs. And so now you have this young kid out here trying to navigate life. And we know what some of our young men succumb to: the gangs, drugs, the violence, because it's in their environment. And until we pull them out and empower them and expose them to other things, that's the cyclical, the generational curse that continues to happen over and over and over and over again. So as an educator, seeing this and being in tune, I'm like, okay, we have to do something a little bit drastic. Yeah, the academic portions are fine, but that social emotional learning coupled with academics, you really begin to tap into the root issue of why Johnny is acting up or acting out or being suspended or getting into fights or running with the gangs. It's something that's deeper, and it takes relationship building and a consistency and being able to listen, and then being able to say, okay, how can I come alongside of you to help you kind of navigate this? And so we introduced what we call Super Saturday Study, which was part of our C.H.A.M.P.S program. And I said, the Monday through Friday, that's good, that's essential, but that's not good enough. We have to actually couple that in every Saturday, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Give me 3 hours. Why? It's because it's a lot of foot traffic happening on the weekends. And I knew if I can intercept and get in a little bit earlier, mentally, we can give them some food for thought that can kind of help them make better decisions in the life that they're navigating.
I love that. And just even what you're sharing just about like just being there hand in hand, it kind of goes to my next question. So whenever I talked about, okay, I want to do this boys conference, right? One, it's a passion because I have a son. And so I'm like, I want him to be in a space because I understand the power of having not only strong mentors, but also having strong friendships and those bonds you have with the other young men. I would come up with a wall, and I don't know if you've come across this. So when I was advertising about the conference, the conversation was, well, I mean, does every boy really need a mentor, right? Like, it's, only the boys need mentors that don't have their dads, or only boys need mentors that don't, have that person in their life that person they could look up to. And my argument was that I don't believe that, right? I believe at the end of the day, it couldn't hurt me to have multiple mentors, right? So have you heard that, or have you had that pushback? Because I think a lot of times people have this misconception that these kind of mentoring programs are for at-risk students, for boys who may not have that guidance at home. Maybe they do have their father at home. What have you been able to just kind of share when it comes to why it's so crucial that they have a mentor in their lives?
Think about it. Every level of greatness, right, starts somewhere. Whether they had a coach, that's a mentor, a preacher, a pastor, that's a mentor, a teacher, a parent, a guardian, a peer, those are forms of mentorship. I don't care who you are, everyone needs and must have a mentor.
Yes.
At this place in my life, which I'll be 40 next month by the grace of God, I still have mentors, people that speak into my life, people that help guide and direct me. And so it's essential that it's not, what we call youth that are at risk or youth with complex needs. We all have different needs, and we all should be engaging in the power of mentorship because it's a renewal process. And here's another thing. It's not that I'm the mentor and they're the mentee, or the student versus teacher. We become co-experts. Why? It's because the individual that you're mentoring is actually mentoring you. It's a power and it's a refreshing. That's why I was able to kind of stay hip and young, because I'm around youth and they give me their youthfulness, their life. And so I'm able to take that and give it back to them. And so it's an exchange. Now we're co-experts. It's not just, hey, I'm the mentor and you're the mentee, I tell you what to do. No, we're learning from each other. And that's the power of mentorship. It's a true exchange.
I love that. It's not just a one-sided conversation or a one-sided relationship. And I just put up here Erica's comment. She said, "OMG, does every boy need a mentor?" Yes. And I think about even me as a woman. Um, I had both my parents in my life. However, it was so helpful that I had at certain stages of my life someone else I was able to talk to. It wasn't that I couldn't talk to my mom. I wouldn't couldn't talk to my dad, but for whatever reason, that point in my life, it would just help to have that outside voice or someone who could actually give confirmation to what's happening at home, right? And so again, it's really this whole, which I love to talk about, the village concept. It takes really that village to raise a child, and we should be able to feel like, okay, yeah, they're getting the training and the morals and all those things at home, but also, you know what, this is a part of my village who's helping this boy and girl to become well rounded.
Absolutely. And you know, and
Yeah.
that's the power of being connected to a village, because we're responsible and we are accountable to one another.
Yes. Yes.
Mm.
Yep. This is something I've talked a lot about when it comes to just a lot of the work we do with Burst into Books, like education, and just how is that relationship when it comes to our youth. And so uh, I have my opinions and things I'm definitely going to share. But when we think about boys in the education system, I would love, because when I looked at your three pillars, one of them is education. And I believe that it's so important. Yes, the empowerment and the exposure, but education piece. And so, uh, why was that so crucial for you? Because I think that mentorship, we sometimes only look at it on the social emotional piece. But how is it, because you take care of that piece, it's reflecting in these other areas for these young men?
Yeah, education, both informal and formal, are extremely important, right?
Mm,
Like the foundation of our education, you have to learn how to read. And that's something that, you know, and I love what you're doing with Burst into Books. Something that even my 6-year-old son, we had to start reading to him in the womb. We had to
mm,
get him prepared, singing songs and doing nursery rhymes. And so now, you know, you build up 2, 3 sight words, and you know, you're able to kind of identify words and you reiterate that. And so you always constantly preparing. And so I look at that and say, hey, if you can't read or write by a certain age, the statistics go up high. You're going
yeah,
to end up being locked up. See, all the school to prison pipeline is very real. And
so real.
so, essentially, education, having a proper education. And that may look like, okay, a kid is getting ready, 17, 18, getting ready to graduate from high school. And, you know, we push in college, but they may find an internship or a trade or certification. As long as we get in the proper education and we get in the proper supports, we have to be able to support that process. And I have found that young men who start off doing really well, they get into what we call a fixed mindset. They don't
Yeah,
have the growth mindset anymore because things have become so easy and they rely on talent and skill alone. And what you have to do, you have to stay sharp, you have to stay engaged, you have to push yourself and challenge yourself and couple that in with, all right, what is the next step for me? I'm
yeah,
here, but I have to have some goals. And so I talked a couple of days about setting goals and conquering those goals, right? Writing those goals down is something powerful when you write it down. And that's something that happened to me when I got to college. I wasn't able to achieve high levels of academic prowess in high school. But when I got to college, I said, I got a new start. Here we go. Let me write down my 3 goals. And I
it's in the
learned about
beginning.
it. I learned about it. Those individuals who write their goals, right, and see them, and you steady, you know, meditating on them, and you working towards them, you're able to accomplish them. So I wrote down 3 goals real quick. One, I wanted to get above a 3.0 GPA. Two, I wanted to get scholarships and grants. And then 3, I wanted to graduate in 4 years. I wanted to be the first one out of my family to graduate from college. Guess what? I fulfilled all 3 goals. Why?
Mhm.
Is because it stayed on my mind. The moments where I wanted to quit, and there were a lot of times, I would go back to my goals and said, nope, can't do it. These goals are holding me accountable now. And so, yeah, that education is really important. And information has to be translated to education, which means you act on what you know.
Exactly. Additional piece I want to add on is us both working in high school. I'm sure you see how there's this high influx of young Black boys or Latinx boys that are in freshman classes, right? And then as you progress from sophomore, junior, senior year, that number goes down, and that's always been disheartening for me. Especially because a lot of them had nothing to do with lack of ability, right? And it didn't have to do with so much that they didn't want to. But I think even with that fixed mindset, it was some things that were already implanted in them about where they could land, right? So I had boys who already came to me already believing that Ms. Gorham, that's not me. You know what I mean? Or I'm always the troublemaker. Or I'm always the one. And so it's like trying to reverse those mindsets. And so I wanted to know, like, even with your mentorship program, maybe, yeah, they have those goal setting and all those different things, but how have you seen, because I just couldn't help but know that them coming to you every Saturday and every week, just the fact alone that I have this person that I know that believes in me and is looking at me, that's going to be something else that's a driving force behind me, because that's going to be helping me not only to fix my mindset to even set goals, but to know that even when I want to quit on myself, there's somebody else that's not going to quit on me. Do you have any like stories with that, or do you just like amen
Yeah.
that's true?
Yeah, amen and amen. It's nothing like having a positive role model, right? That you can
Yeah.
see, that you can touch, that you can interact with, especially when they are consistent. And so for me, I knew that once I started the mentoring program, there were going to be a lot of boys to test it to see if it was really real. And so the one thing for me, I knew that I had to be consistent. So what
Yes.
is negative 20 degrees outside? I'm still coming on Saturday at 10 o'clock.
Mm.
So you won't be able to beat me to say, hey, Mr. Singleton, you didn't show up, right? It's very few times where I haven't showed up in 5 years. And it's hurting me now that I'm not able to physically be in that space.
Yeah.
Because when you build that momentum, what happens is you build a reputation. And so people say, oh, yeah, that program, they consistent. Yeah, they meet every Saturday, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. And the powerful thing is we talk about retaining and retention. Those younger relationships when kids are transitioning from 8th to 9th grade is a really critical year. I lost
Yeah.
my mother in my 8th grade year, and it was really, really difficult for me to navigate a lot of things from a growth and development standpoint, from a mental
Yeah.
standpoint, from a spiritual, emotional. You're still learning and you're growing. And so stability and routine is extremely important for
Yeah.
8th grader, 9th grader. And the more they have like touches of support, care, and accountability, the longer they will stay in that process. The less of that they have, less accountability, they won't show up for school and no one's checking. They'll continue down that path. So it's really, really important to have coaches, supports, mentors, teachers, really supporting, especially 9th graders, critical
Yeah.
age.
Yes. And as we are continuing on, we have people who are commenting, which I love, and I'll shout them out in a second. If you're watching, share this video, share it, share. I want people to join this conversation as we're talking about why is mentorship so important in our community and just what can we do as we play a part. I love the word you just said, consistency. And that is just something that I've also know that's even true for the work that I do, that it's important that when you build relationships with the youth and their parents, you actually it's so rewarding because now they look at you as a part of that family, right? And so
Yep.
the moment that you leave or the moment you are less consistent, it also puts up their guards, right? And so right now we're in a situation which is hard for me. I can't be with my families physically. Right, I can't. There's been some programming. I've had some families reach out to me like, "Oh, he's missing this," or "Oh, we miss you," and and just being consistent is still very necessary during this time. And so, the question I had is just like, I'm sure you've been like really thinking about this. What does mentorship look like during this pandemic? Right. So maybe we had some consistent programming and things that have been like clockwork. We don't know how long we're gonna be in the house. We
Right.
don't know how long, people are worried. Relationships are, it's hard when you're not in the same space with someone. Virtual is cool, but it's not the same. And so I just wanted to talk to that. Like mentorship is important, but what does it look like now during this pandemic? And what does it look like for you?
Yeah, let me acknowledge that, this time, I've never seen a time like this in my entire life.
No.
So the pause and really think about the time that we're in is just like unheard of. And then when you dig deeper in the data and you see the African American community, again, it's a pandemic going on, but the epidemic is still going on at the
Yeah.
same time. So you're wrestling with two fights, a pandemic and an epidemic, all at
Yes.
once. And so what happens is this mental trauma, this heavy trauma that we're not able to process. And I'm still trying to recover from the last couple young men that were shot and killed. Right? Supposed to been going to a funeral, didn't even get a chance to go. It was in the middle of this, haven't even talked about it. And so for me, I'm like, okay, this time now has to be used to keep us engaged, to stay mentally sharp. And so what I'm telling young men, our mentors, we have to stay engaged and mentally sharp. We have to be creative during this time with our time to make sure that we become the version 2.0 of ourselves. So like daily calls, you know, I know the virtual calls are not the same, but they're important to keep consistency. So we're going on into our third week of virtual calls, set up a Google Classroom, doing remind messages, whatever I can to kind of keep rhythm and keep consistency. And so what happens, though, when you're not in the physical spaces and you're not getting that in-person interaction, you lose momentum. So you have to figure out ways to kind of conjure that momentum back and keep everybody engaged. And I got to say, it's very, very difficult, but we have to use this time to come out better than when we started.
Yeah, two things came to mind when you said that. One, and I want to say them so you can think about your response. The first is, who keeps the mentor mentally sharp, right? Because I know that even during this time, I had to be honest with myself a few days of just kind of unplugging and being able to really regroup, because just as much as life is happening with my students and happening with the families I serve, life has been happening with our own family, right? And so just being able to make sure that we're not trying to pour out of these empty cups. And then the second thing is just the idea of, okay, so we know that for some of our mentees or people who came to our program was safe havens, right? And so what I mean by that is that even in my classroom or even in my program, there were kids that them coming to my program was like, will put a smile on their face because at home is so much dysfunction, right? Or, you know, I look forward to these events because my parents really can't afford it. And I love the fact that it's free. And so we can come consistently. So that thing is lost. And so the first question is like, how do you keep mentally sharp? Because I think it is important that we understand that we don't just disconnect, and people can understand life happens, but that consistency is important, as I saw someone mention. But also, how do we also, let's start with that. Like, how do you stay mentally sharp to be able to help these young men to stay mentally sharp?
Yeah, first of all, you got to be honest with yourself, right? Like, again, this is a crazy time that we in. So first, acknowledge, like, this is crazy. But second, you got to fight to maintain, to have some type of routine, right? So for me, it's like, what information do I need to read every day? Starting off with prayer and meditation for me, something that I always do every day. And that's familiar to me. And then, like, for those of you who have a support system, I have a wonderful wife. She's also an administrator, and she's been extremely busy. And so, like, making sure that we kind of talking through and staying, like, mentally focused on, like, okay, what goals do we have? So, like, for me, every day I have to clean. I have to clean. Every day I have to say, okay, I'm going to get this done by the end of the day. I have to make sure that, you know, like, washing the dishes, doing the laundry, like, that's therapeutic for me, right?
Yeah.
So, and then being able to announce to my wife, like, yep, see what I did? I took care of the laundry, I did the dishes, and she's like, yep. And then also spending that time to listen to her to make sure that she's able to kind of, but that balance is crucially important, because there's a saying or a scripture that say, what profit a man to gain the whole world and lose his soul? So you can be out trying to save the whole world, but you lose your own soul in the process. So for me, as a helper in the helping business, these are things that I've been able to do to stay refreshed over all of these years. And just because we're quarantined at home, that shouldn't change. Matter of fact, it should be all the more, because now you have time to reflect. I was telling the mentors and mentees on the call last week that for the first time I had the opportunity to drink a cup of water and feel it going through my body and saying, this feels refreshing. Why? Is because we always moving.
Yeah.
Fast, going. We don't process anything. And so use this time to process. And in that course, you're able to kind of stay sharp, stay grounded. And for me as a helper, as we're giving out, we can kind of give out of the overflow versus like running on fumes, which is really important.
Yes. A few people, I just want to share their comments. So Lauren McGee said mentorship is contact. During this time, he likes to make sure he's consistent with the youth as much as important. He likes making consistent contact with the youth is important. He's able to keep contact with his 253 young men through different methods, whether that's the house party app, calls, things of that nature. And again,
that's my brother. What's up, Vic? Good to see you, bro.
Yeah. He said that he's in agreement with you that mentorship must be consistent. And again, I think that, like you said, we're in times where we're quarantined, but this is also, I think there's no good time to be quarantined, but this is actually one of the best situations because we do have technology. We do have all these different ways I can physically see you. I'm thinking about when I was in high school, we didn't have cell phones and all these different things like that. And so to be able to have this much technology to keep in contact is cool. And Vic said, "What's up?"
And shout out to I think it was Christian. He was on earlier, so I'm kind of seeing your post. So I don't have it in front of me. So when it pop up, I'm kind of seeing it. So what's up, Christian? He was one of the original C.H.A.M.P.S members at Gary Comer College Prep.
Yeah, with the football. Yeah, I saw his comment as well. Joseph Williams said, "Hey, you guys, what's up, Joe?" He said that's real important. Self-care is much important. Erica spoke to iron sharpens iron. My trusted intellectual circle and my fam helps me to stay present. And yes, a routine is critical. I listen a lot to people who are, leaders in their industries, and some of the things they always share that you got to have some non-negotiables. You got to have some things that you do every single day because that's going to help you to be filled, and it's going to help you to be able to make sure you're doing your best. Vic, he's sharing. I want to share this because it speaks to the work you helped with him. He said, when I was a student, my senior year in 2015, every morning and end of the day, Singleton always had something positive and motivational for me to think up, want to become better than I ever thought I was. Involving my music and sports. Now I'm in the big leagues and I got my name across the world. Thanks to him and my parents and family, also C.H.A.M.P.S family who motivated to success. C.H.A.M.P.S all in.
C.H.A.M.P.S all in, baby. C.H.A.M.P.S all in. Everybody doing the all in. We've been rocking all in for years. And so it's kind of cool to see this all in thing. But my thing is, like, he's able to tell that story and now he's able to pass it and pay it forward. And that's the power of it. It's a quote that I always like to share and like to say from Oral Roberts. He says, success without a successor is failure. You haven't really become successful until you're able to give that success to somebody else. And so, I love to hear testimonies like that. And my hope and my prayer is that the same individuals that I've been blessed to impact, that they do the same for somebody else. That's how we continue the legacy of and the power of mentorship.
I love that. And just even there, you're going to my next piece was like call to action. So what do you believe in this time is really like the call of action for us? And when it comes to mentorship, and as we just know the state of we're in, like what would you say is our call to action?
I would say, the call to action is number one, come together, right? Yeah. Like let's get real about the systemic issues, the racism and discrimination that we face. Let's come together and really let's get behind, because now when we leave from this situation, we're going to leave totally different. All the social rules are going to be changed, the way businesses operate, the way you have events, the way you do this, the way school is. And so now we can kind of like start from scratch and rebuild what we want it to look like. So we have an opportunity that we've never had before, right, to really process. I wonder how many billion-dollar businesses are about to come out of this. Like, right. And that's what I'm saying. Like, we have social media is great, but let's not just be consumers of it.
Exactly.
Let's start to figure out how do we produce And how do we get ahead so that way we coming out, like I said, a version 2.0 of ourselves? And everybody has a responsibility to hold themselves accountable and say, again, what are the goals, the short goals that I'm working on? What are the long-term goals that I'm working on? And then how do I add value in whatever specific field that I'm in, that I'm going into? Like, we should at least come out with at least 3 to 5 ideas, at least, that can change the whole world, that can change the whole generation, the community. So, you know, that's kind of like my thinking is like, what are we doing with the time that we have right now to accelerate everything?
Yeah. And I think about even what you said in regards to when you went to college. This was like a world reset, right? So even if the way you were doing business, you weren't necessarily the most successful, or if you were, you can consider like some new systems. When you think about just your relationships with individuals, I